Good morning, and welcome to this edition of Joe on the Job Site. Today, our guest is Terra Roux. Welcome, Tara. Thank you for coming today and talking with us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.
Could you give us a little history of how you started in working in the industry?
Absolutely. So, I was in high school and I honestly was not in the construction path was not one that I was really looking at. It was one that I started off in the medical field. I had done some internships and it was really a driving force for me. That's how the path that I wanted to take. And went all the way into starting off my first couple of semesters in college and was on the medical track and what I wanted to do in the medical field. I sat in an I sat in a introductory class, and when I at the end of the class, one of the professors said to me, "This isn't for you." And part of it was because of my age.
Your age?
My age at the time. So I
Too
would have
young?
been
Too old?
too young and didn't have the experience of a lot of the other people that were sitting in the room. They had, whether they were a CNA or some other position. And what I was trying to go into, I was dedicated to going into that field directly. So the feedback that I received was, "This really isn't for you." I said, "No, I'm going to fight for this," and had some thoughts. I said, what else do I really wanna do? If this isn't for me, what else is for me?" So, after a lot of long, thoughtful, thought-filled nights, I said, "You know what? I wanna look at something that I'm not sure if it's something I really wanna do," but I got into an architectural technology program. It was a certificate program. I figured if I invested the time,
Right?
that it would be something that if I really liked it, I would take it further.
And did you?
I did. I ended up graduating with a certificate in architectural technology from a local community college and transferred that over to a four-year school. And I was planning on going into the architecture program. But the architecture program, after a couple of semesters, I thought to myself, this is not what I want to do on a daily basis. I don't want to be in the office all the time. I
I
want to
can
see.
share that feeling.
Absolutely. It's
Yes.
when you start seeing construction happening in the field,
Yeah?
that's when I said, "You know what? I need to look at, other avenues." I had an amazing advisor who said to me, "You know what? Come and take a look at the construction management program." And here I am today after graduating with a four-year degree in construction management from the school that I went to and, 25 years later in the industry.
While you were in college, were you like an intern touring jobs or going places and things, where you get a little taste of the work?
Absolutely. So I did 2 internships, one for a trust design company, and the second was being involved in the student chapters of ABC and NAHB. And it there was a great opportunity for us to be able to the students to be able to interact with the local GC market and up in I was in the Boston area,
Right?
and we were actually at an ABC dinner meeting, and we had a big GC in the area say, "You wanna come and visit a project that we have going on." Little did I know what that project was, and we ended up visiting the Big Dig, which happened this was back in 2000, it probably started in '98 all the way through 2006, 2007.
Right.
So, we went ahead, visited the job site, and we were actually able to drop into a glory hole.
So before they go down the hole, what was the big dig? What was the overall scope?
So the overall scope was actually taking the roadway structure, the highway system, and bringing it all underground. So they were digging these massive holes under the ground to be able to take the highway system, four-lane road, underground so that they could beautify the city of Boston and be able to bring the greenery back into the space. Those are old
Okay.
historic roads and everything. So being able to actually, you know, take take the city to another level, so
That's quite a monumental task,
yeah,
but I like the end results was to bring the greenery back and less industrial look because of the roadways. So you went down the hole.
so we went down the hole, my first experience on scaffold and going down, it was over 100 feet underground,
So
and
Was it like a stair tower scaffold, or did you have to go down one of them wooden ladders and zigzag back and forth?
It was a hanging scaffold going back and forth, and then the last 40 to 50 feet of it was a man-made wood ladder. And that honestly, that's one of my biggest fears, was
Wooden
the
ladders.
wooden ladders.
So I bet on
Piece
all your jobs now, they're stair towers.
there are now, but for many, many years, they were not.
So keep going. That sounds I'd
No,
love to hear
absolutely.
what you saw down there.
So as we the glory hole had just had the drilling rig removed from that particular hole the week before. So when we got into the hole, there was a trash dumpster with loads of reinforcing sitting next to it, and there were rod busters that were literally just laying out the roadway structure of what they were building. So as you walked through this glory hole from one end to another, by the time you got to the end, you saw every phase of construction. So you were able to see the reinforcing being installed. And then once they had the reinforcing installed, then they were pouring and placing concrete. And then as you went further in, they were hanging tile on the wall. They were putting finishes in. The electricians were there, wiring everything up, putting the lighting in. So you literally, in a matter of 2.5 hours, you saw every phase of construction from start to finish.
How long was that thing did you walk
It
through?
was several hundred feet,
Okay.
glory hole to glory hole, but it was an amazing opportunity to see. It's not very often you can walk through one location in a couple of hours and see start to finish construction.
Wow, just the safety equipment aspect of that, just to keep the air moving and the fumes out. There must have been some
Absolutely.
huge fans,
Absolutely.
and I'd always wanna see how in the world they take the material and put the material in. I guess they just dropped it down the glory hole.
Crane everything in. Absolutely.
Wow, that's something else.
It is.
That's a once in a lifetime opportunity that you can see.
Without a doubt. I remember walking out of there. This is before cell phones and having cameras. We had, there are paper copies of photos that I took there, but outside of that, it's all, in memory of what I saw, going from one glory hole to the next. And it was amazing. It made me realize this is the reason why I am doing what I am, why I'm following this path.
That kind of work is the kind of work that I enjoy the most. The building the same type of building over and over and over is it's a great career. But for me, I wanted something that was challenging, something you had to think through and think on instead of doing the same thing over and over.
Absolutely.
That sounded like a great experience. So after your glory hole and you finished your college, what were you up to next?
So after college, I started working with a large general contractor. I had two opportunities on the table. One was to stay in the Massachusetts area where I was born and raised, and the other was to leave the area. And the company that I went with gave me an opportunity, and I moved to the Washington D.C. area. And it was an amazing opportunity to get out there and just see a different type of construction. Whether we believe it or not, a lot of, construction is just different depending on where you're building. So
Right.
being able to see a new type of construction and the first job that I was supposed to go on to an office building. And when I arrived, my very first project was shocking to me. I was assigned to the National Institutes of Health Clinical Research Center in Bethesda, Maryland, and I remember showing up to that job site thinking to myself, "They realize that I just graduated from college and I know a lot about the book, but I am not sure what I'm doing here."
And at that point, that's one of the things we like to bring and talk about a little bit is you can graduate with the training, but what really sizes up the world is your field experience. And
Without a doubt.
you just said I walked out of the classroom and into a job and I knew the paperwork end,
Mhm.
but the real meat and potatoes was out in the field that I had to learn.
Absolutely.
One of the things I used to always like to do is when I had an intern was instead of giving them paperwork to shuffle in the office, was out in the field. Send them out to watch the pours, to check the rebars, make sure the post tension cables had the right drape, the right location, the right space, the right clearance. Start inspecting, watching the PT stress, watching the columns and the rebar and the elevator shafts and all the things that we did, so they could see it. because once you see it in the field and you go in and you're working on paper, it really clicks, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, well, it helps you develop from that two-dimensional plan that you're looking at, taking it in the field. Not everyone has the ability to be able to see things dimensionally. I had a challenge with it. There were many, many times where I would take a drawing out in the field, grab a superintendent and say, "I need you to show me how does it go from here to this?" To the three-dimensional piece that was there. And I've never ran into someone who said, "Absolutely not, I don't have time for it."
So you
So
ran into a lot of people that would mentor you or talk to
oh,
you
yeah,
and teach you how,
absolutely.
which is an important part of coming up to the craft is having someone take the time to explain it to you
Yes.
instead of just shoving you aside. And in the past, I've had people that would not teach. They would just let you just muddle through and figure out the hard way. And then somebody was griping at you because you didn't do or it took you too long and you figured it out. But they could have just coached you a little bit and made it go that much easier.
Oh, absolutely. That
And the
coaching is important.
well, the other thing that you did too that I like to hear is you asked somebody you didn't know. You asked a question.
Yes.
And you just said you had good luck with people not really saying anything, but other than helping you when you asked a question. And that is a sign of strength. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
Mhm.
Anyway, where was your next spot?
And I would just wanna say the mentors that, on a project that size, the mentors that we ran into are to this day, 25 years later, are still mentors to me. So, being able to have those people ask the questions, learn from them, was pretty
You
amazing.
ever pick up the phone and call them and say, "Hey, this is a blast from the past. I got a question for you."
Right, or social media and drop them a message some of them have retired out, things like that, so it's great to be able to keep in contact with those individuals.
Played an important part, and just think they helped you and how many people they probably touched in their career to help them grow.
Yes, absolutely.
It's a pretty good coverage, and it's wonderful to see that happen on projects.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, in your next one?
So the next opportunity was so the company that I went to work for was very strong in training and training development, and the estimating role was the next one that I had the opportunity to do a rotation in. And that was an amazing opportunity to be able to go in there and look at trades that I had not dealt with in the field, but learn how to do the takeoffs and the benefits in that. Sitting in those rooms, in that particular environment, it was a lot of public work that was being bid. So you have a bid day. There was a war room, and
I've been
you
in
s-
those.
you sit in a war room where you have your chief estimators, your vice presidents, maybe even the president of the division, and they're looking at the numbers saying, "Okay, where are we gonna come in on this number?" There's someone on the other end who is waiting for those numbers to write them in on the turn-in package.
I've
So
been that person.
it's an amazing it's the adrenaline is pumping. Even when you're playing a small role in it, you're standing there saying, "What's next?"
It's 2 o'clock. The bid is at 2 o'clock. It's 1:55,
Right?
and I'm waiting right now to write.
Exactly. All of the numbers but 2, and typically your MEPs are a concrete number, the last number's waiting to come in, and, to have that opportunity to work with estimators who that's what they do, that's their profession, and to sit with each of them to learn the little intricacies on how to be successful with takeoffs,
Yeah.
was something that I didn't realize then how important it was.
And your understanding of how the project goes together.
Yes.
Because it's one of the things a superintendent has to do is look at a lot of the details and then paint the picture.
Right.
You're doing the estimate, so you went through all the channels, you know what's in that project.
Absolutely.
You've probably painted your own picture of how you would put it together.
Right, and hindsight's 2020, you look back afterwards and say, "Oh, now I understand a little bit better what they were talking about when the pre-planning was happening during the estimating phase."
So training and diversity, that is a key element on a project.
Oh,
If
yes.
generally you have a PE, a PM, and a superintendent, and having the superintendent blend a little bit of what the PE does, a little bit of what the PM, and then vice versa for the other two can make the job go so much easier.
Absolutely.
And understanding why a PM makes the decisions that he does, knowing your budget that you have or your pay app with the details in it for what each contractor, your scopes, he can make a good decision to help the PM and not give the PM a curveball. And the same thing with the PE. The importance of a superintendent, you really don't think about it, but he goes and helps the PE look at the shop drawings. A superintendent and a PE, you're going to look at shop drawings in two different ways. And having those two a little bit crossed makes a big difference on how the project can move forward. And it cuts out a lot of headaches that you get in the future.
Absolutely.
I'm a proponent of that. I love to see it.
Just the relationship that is built there. Every project that I have been on in my career, that relationship, as you gain more experience in the industry, you realize how important it is. It's nobody's working against each other. That team comes together and works. If you are all on the same page through the course of the project, there are going to be times where we're going to agree to disagree, but at the end of the day, the overall the path that the job is going, when you have that open relationship with each other, it
It's a
makes the
benefit. It's a
absolutely.
benefit. There's a lot of people that when they're in a group conversation, they have a hard time when someone doesn't take their idea. Somebody has to lead the pack. Somebody has to make the final decision.
Very true.
And a lot of time it involves the leader or leadership saying, okay, this part works, and this part works. So we're going to use these three components to answer this or to solve this problem. And it's not personal. But
Absolutely not.
sooner or later, one of these days, the other people can come up with an idea, but it's not personal. It's the benefit of the job.
Absolutely.
And then the big thing is the company makes money.
Company makes money and people are learning when you any project engineer on a job, assistant project manager taking the opportunity to throw out ideas. No idea
Yep.
is a bad idea. Just
No,
so and that I think that's a huge aspect that a lot of people they stay, especially when you're younger in the industry, they don't think about, they're not going to want my idea. They're what I'm thinking of isn't going to work. Throw it out there.
throw it
You
out
never
there.
know. Sometimes your idea will trigger 2 or 3 other ideas, and then at the end of the day, you save extra money because we've thought of a different route,
Yep.
you know? So,
And there you go with that one word, team.
yes,
The team helped it. They solved it. They worked it through. They came up with the answer, the solution.
absolutely.
The team did it. So if you had to pick some of your more favorite jobs, what would they be? Something that you have a memorable learning in.
Memorable learning, I'd say there are 2 that really stick out for me. One, Office Depot Global Headquarters. That was my first experience on a multi-phased project where the initial project was called Project X so that nobody knew who was building that particular project. But the minute they put the paint on the outside of the building and it was Office Depot red, everyone knew what the job was. And there were some really unique things that we did on that project,
Now that was a large tilt wall project, wasn't it?
it was. So large tilt wall project, we actually had a batch plant on site. So it was a smaller batch plant, but it was great to have that flexibility to be able to pour when we needed, when, at the perfect times.
Now,
And
just so everyone knows, a batch plant is where instead of having the concrete trucked in,
mhm,
all the materials are set there, mixed per the engineer's design. They're put into a short truck and
right.
then, or what we call a short haul truck, not a
Mhm.
smaller truck. And then it's brought out and you can actually, it's nice because when you have a batch plant on the site, you don't have to worry about traffic.
Not at all.
Nobody wants to do the 3 a.m. pours so they can get 800 yards down before the traffic bites them.
Very true.
Anyway,
Absolutely.
sorry.
So that was one, just the unique finishes that, Office Depot, they have great vision on the things that they want. We had walls that had rubber bands and paper, pencils and, paper clips. It was a very
So this
unique
was a
project.
distribution center.
This is actually their main headquarters.
Oh, their main headquarters. Okay.
Absolutely. So it was 3 huge buildings. We had a team of 20 on that project. So it was, you have different personalities, different people at different levels and learning from each other. I was an assistant project manager at the time. There were 3 of us, so we had each other to go to. But then we also had a great leadership team when it came to our superintendents and executives who were on the site at that time. It was a high profile job for us and they took us to places that we didn't realize that we needed to go to,
Yeah.
so that was pretty amazing.
That kind of that size of a project, team meetings are important.
Oh,
Catch-up
yes.
meetings, whatever you wanna call them. Sit
Mhm.
down, you talk, you go over the job, you let each other know your hurdles, your challenges. People have ideas and looks at different views of stuff. It's a great opportunity to show a team in a team
Absolutely.
meeting.
Right, absolutely. I'd say the next one after that, I spent about 4.5 years, military work, and that took me out of town. I was in Florida at the time, but Georgia and North Carolina were apparently
You
calling
have
my
to
name, and I started off in Georgia first at Fort Benning. It was a reception station barracks, so it was based when a new Army cadet is coming out, they actually have to go to a receiving center, and we go ahead and we built their barracks for them, and then we also did, barracks over at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and it was a great opportunity. Tunnel construction, that was
So
first exposure to
what
that.
kind of work were you doing? Were you a PM, PE, or
So I was an assistant project manager, but for those particular project, I was a quality control manager for the government. So while I was being paid by the company I worked for, I was responsible for all of the inspections and making sure that process and procedure was followed to the government standards. Spent a lot of time out in the field. I honestly, best 5 years of my life, that
seeing
time
it?
out in the field.
I'll bet when you got off of that job for quality control, you had a whole difference of opinion when that's
Oh,
going
yes.
together. "Oh, don't worry about it. It's only out of plumb a little bit."
Mm-mm.
Fix it now.
Absolutely. Well, and you walk into any building and your quality of detail that you look at anything you see in any building you walk into is elevated. So,
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize the longevity of the building is by how well the exterior skin is done.
yes,
So, the sealants, the finishes, the grading, the drainage, and all the little things that you don't really think about add life to the building, and quality control in that puts a long life on that building for the military.
absolutely. 50 years at minimum is what they build for. So,
50?
that's what they say, I think they use them a heck of a lot longer than that, but
Yeah, I've been around Fort Knox. I've seen some buildings out there that are pretty old in my younger days.
absolutely. And as was it there at both of the bases, you walk on site and you see these buildings that had been there for years. So,
So, if you were to say to a young and upcoming person of a something to help them learn or get better in their craft or their trade, what would you tell 'em? 1, 2, or 3 things.
first thing I would say is be a sponge. That's something that was said to me many, many years ago, and it took me about 4 or 5 years into my career to really understand what that meant.
Yeah.
And being a sponge, never stop learning. This industry is forever changing, and it's something that's so important that, right now where AI is upon us, we have to keep learning, and the day that we s
Yeah,
the day
that's
that we
true.
stop, it's I always say the day that we stop is the day we need to find another career, so that's really important.
Or retire.
Mhm, or retire. I'm not quite there yet. So, training and development is, we talked about training and development. That's something that near and dear to my heart. It's something that give back that I see now at this point in my career. You know, being able to go out there and make sure that the younger generation that's coming in understands, who, what, where, why we do the things that we do. Give that theory, and when they walk out of a class saying, "Now I get it."
Yeah.
That's what it just sits near and dear to me. So,
I getting out in the field is one of mine that I
yes.
like to see, is taking the time and getting out into the field to see how the parts and pieces are going together.
Mhm.
So that when you look at the drawings or you're sitting there doing a change order, you understand how the building went together and, okay, yes, this is a bona fide change order. Or no, this is not a bona fide change order. Or when you're doing billing and you're walking for billing, you're marking off their production for what they've billed for that month, their pay app.
Mhm.
And you can look at it and understand what's in place and what the materials are so you can actually judge. Okay, no, he's not 80% done. He's probably 40 if he's anything,
Right.
because you have to keep up with that. And then the same thing for when someone comes to you with a problem in a drawing and you have to look at it and find it, you can understand. I've seen this connection before. And then the other thing I like is mistakes.
Yes.
I don't like mistakes, but they happen, and you have to figure out how to solve them and move forward with them, and don't be afraid to ask the questions.
And also be okay with telling other people the mistakes that you've made.
Exactly.
Share them so that they don't make that same mistake, and let them know you're going to make mistakes, but we'll work through them, figure them out together.
Just bring them to us. Don't
Yes,
hide them. Bring them to us.
absolutely.
We will solve them. And, I've had younger guys that make a mistake and they feel pretty bad and think they're getting ready to get fired. My question to them is, "You learned from that, right?" "Yep." I said, "Do you think you'll make it again?" "No."
Never, never. And I've had those that, I've had those, but I learned something from it. So that's what's important.
So, in, some of the work that you've done, have you had the opportunity yourself to mentor someone yourself? To teach them that to get them to understand, to learn, to grow. Have you had an opportunity for that?
I have, and it's the most rewarding thing that I can say that I've been able to do to give back for the years that I've been in the industry. More so probably in the last, 5 to 10 years. And some of it is a confidence piece that you have to get to that point when you say, "Hey, listen, I wanna give back." And then when someone comes to you and says, "You know what? I haven't seen someone in 5 years," comes up to me and says, "Thank you so much. You pushed on me hard, and now I understand why."
Yep.
And because it's tough sometimes being the one who has to deliver the bad news and tell them that they've done something wrong. However, if they take something from it and they come back later and they're thankful for it, it's the full circle,
Yes.
you know.
They gotta understand it's not a career-ending mistake.
Right.
It's no different than you make a mistake at home or riding your bike or working on your
Yeah,
car or working on a hobby. You still have to learn,
absolutely.
and that's a good thing. Mistakes, they're lessons. Lessons learned that
Very
most
true.
people don't make more than once.
That's true.
So
That's true.
you've gone through quite a bit of experience with your work from all the way up to a PM, and you understand you're in a group, and I think it's called NAWIC.
Yes, sir.
And I'd like to touch on that, and then when we come back after the break, I'd like for you to tell us some details about it and some of the functions and things they do. How long have you
Absolutely.
been a member for NAWIC?
I have been a member of NAWIC now. This is my 5th year with the organization, and it was an opportunity. I'd heard about it, but it was something that I didn't jump, feet first into. And I got to a point in my career where I wanted to make some big changes. I wanted to make some big steps, and I engulfed myself in. I went back to school. I also ended up, joining the local NAWIC chapter and met so many amazing people. And I honestly did not realize that that network was so large. NAWIC is 6,000 plus women strong across the country.
National Association of Women in Construction.
Yes.
Cool. I've known about them for years. They're an excellent group.
No, absolutely. And that the training development, they're all about embracing women in the industry, supporting, and it's anyone in the industry, quite honestly. But we do a lot of focus on education and especially with the younger generation and making sure that they know that this is a very viable career. You don't have to go to college in order to, there are trades programs that are out there and available as well as the college route. So there's many avenues that you can get into this industry, a lot of positions within this industry, accounting, things like that. That
I've
there's a lot of people who don't realize how diverse our industry is.
I've met women in construction through my 50-year course. There are some excellent ones I met. I've even had, women carpenters,
Mhm.
plumbers, electricians. This one that I met, over 25, 30 years ago, I remember watching her start in the trade, and she did a little electrical, and then she went into data, communication, security, for that company, and so now I ran into her a few months ago, and she is now still with the same company, but now she's the purchasing director, coordinator for that particular area of work in the company. she made success out of it.
That's fantastic.
And I was glad to hear it. I was tickled to see her when I met her. I got to see her again, that she had stayed in the craft. I had the opportunity years ago to meet a young lady that was a plumber. And I asked her why she chose the trade. And she said, because my dad was a plumber. And I always thought it was interesting. It's not about slapping pipe in the ground or putting up pipe. It's understand hydraulics, flows, pressures, ventings. And she said, how many people can tell you how many toilets that you can put on a 4-inch line? You have to calculate
Mhm.
that, and there are distances and equivalents. He said, "It's not just putting pipe in, you've got to know the trade." She said, "I love that aspect," and I actually saw her, and she did work in the field about 10 years, and when I last saw her about 2 years ago, she was actually she was a project manager for a plumbing company, and she helped put together the training programs for the younger folks to come up and move through.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Sponsored it, and they said, they get a turnover, but
Mhm.
they still get credit, and in that point, when a person has the comfort level in what they're doing, like you just said, someone's teaching them, someone's talking to them, someone's helping them grow, they don't feel like they're just by themselves struggling
Right.
and wanna get out of there, they're more apt to stay.
Absolutely.
So I'd like to come back and have you come back here. I've got to go walk the job and like to see you come back and let's talk about NAWIC. I'd like to hear some of their programs and the things that they do, the sponsorships and what it means to you.
Okay.
That would be great if you have the time.
I would love to.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
This is Joe with my guest Terra Roux, and this is another edition of Joe on the Job Site.